All right, everyone, welcome back to the Abundance Formula podcast. And if you are new to the podcast, we are on a mini series right now called Strong Summer Mini Series. And so, what we're doing is covering four, maybe five pillars. I haven't decided if I'm going to split the fourth pillar into two. It definitely could be. I'm not sure if the fifth pillar would be it doesn't have to be a long episode, but if it'd be worth having its own separate episode, or if maybe I'll just put pillars 4 and 5 in the same episode. But going through several key pillars to creating your strongest summer this year, creating a really great physical fitness transformation, whatever that is for you, whether that's you're wanting to lose body fat, if you're wanting to increase muscle mass, if you're wanting to maintain where you are but feel stronger, feel better energetically, know that you're making healthy lifestyle changes and habit building. So whatever of those goals is for you to create your strongest summer this year, that's what I'm hoping that this little mini series can give you, the education and the information that even if you're not training with me or training with somebody, that you can do this, that you could create an amazing transformation for yourself that you're really proud of just from the nuggets in this little mini series. So if you missed the last episode, the first pillar is hitting our hydration goals. And so we talked about what that looks like, why that's important, why it's integral to this whole thing. And it's like the base foundation that helps everything work most effectively. So if you missed the episode, you can certainly pause this one and start there, or you can pick up with this episode, but make sure you go back to that one because all of these pillars affect each other and they all work together to help you get to your goal. Again, whether that's fat loss, muscle building, combination of those both, or just maintaining where you are and just wanting to feel better and overall amplify your healthy lifestyle. So make sure you listen to all of these episodes in the mini series to get the full amount of capacity to get results. So hydration was the last one. Now we are on to pillar number 2, which is calorie goals / nutrition. But really, I'm going to focus on headlining this is calorie goals. And why I'm doing that is because one of the biggest reasons people don't stick to their health and fitness goals, whether that is for muscle building or just creating better healthy habits, or especially for fat loss, is people just get overwhelmed with technicalities, with knowledge, with options. And so I want, in this podcast, it will be very educational. I'll give you certainly nuggets on a lot of different things. But I also want to break it down to being super simple because you can get amazing results even if you just start out focusing on calories, on your calorie goals. And so I want to start there. And there's a million ways to skin this cat, y'all. And that's one thing I always have to tell my clients. And we'll get into this later as we're talking about this pillar. But there's a lot of different ways to get to your health and fitness goals, and a lot of them work. And the key is to pick one and then stick to it consistently, because you'll have to tweak it. No one person is the same. I'm going to throw out there, I'm going to come at this from 2 different ways in this podcast. Again, basic, this is for beginners. And even if you're advanced, this is going to amplify your knowledge to get better results. But also share the technicalities of how this stuff is even like brought up at all. There's some formulas to figure some of these things out. And so I'm going to give you the balance of like some of the technical book information, but then what I've experienced in my 17, almost 18 years of being a personal trainer, a 5-time national athlete, BS in health science, like from my real life application experience, right? From book knowledge to like real life application, what I've seen and where the middle ground is, and where I find that there's nuances from, technical math to reality. So I'm going to give you both of those sides. Here's the book, but here's how this tends to translate. Your answer might be somewhere in the middle. It's like when you have kids and it's kind of like you're trying to figure out sleep training or potty training. It's right. It's like no one answer is going to be the perfect answer for your kid. It's going to maybe be a combination in between, figuring some of yourself out. But the key is to choose different modalities and stick to it consistently. And then you can make small changes from there, because I've had a lot of people start their health and fitness journey, and there's so much knowledge and, again, avenues to get to your goal out there that they'll start one, stick to it maybe a week or two, but then they'll be like, oh, well, maybe I should be doing this other one. And so then they'll switch and they'll go from, maybe being carnivore to then they're going to go to intermittent fasting. And then they're like, well, maybe I should be low carb, or maybe I should be paleo, right? And so they're jumping all across the board and so none of them are working because they're not sticking to any of them long enough for them to compound and work, let alone for you to build a habit around it, to stay consistent and make it a lifestyle change and not feel like some crash course diet. So I want to start out saying that, so here's an option that I think is very simple, a very great starting place. That's something you can maintain long-term as a lifestyle and customize it as you need to and as your goals change. But yet it's very simple. So calorie goals. All right. Again, I've got notes for this section so that I stay on track because we could talk about this forever. I could talk about this forever. So calorie goals. Number one, your first thing you need to do is figure out what is your goal. What is your actual fitness goal? Is it fat loss? So you're going to be more in a calorie deficit. You're going to be sort of in a cutting or trim up, lean up phase. Are you going to be in a muscle gaining goal? Are you trying to have a little bit of a calorie surplus to build some more muscle? Or are you in a maintenance or maybe body recomposition phase where you're wanting to build some more muscle, maybe lean up a little bit? So kind of a combination. And that might be a slight calorie deficit, but also upping your protein and a little tweaking from there. So what is your goal? And I'm going to speak from the examples that I'm going to give is definitely geared towards women because that's who I work with the most. I do train some men, but for general lifestyle change, general weight loss, like none of them are trying to be bodybuilders, right? So I'm not going to be speaking from a formerly of men. Similar concepts will apply. Numbers of calories, etc., will be different, and I don't claim for that to be my forte, right? So I'm speaking mainly towards women here, but pick one of these three goals where you're at. And if it's a combination between so this is often like one that I'm in, say you get through the holidays and you're wanting to get back ready for summer. So this is kind of where I am at the moment. I'm not doing any fitness competitions this year due to breaking my arm. So I'm really in want to lean up a little for summer, but definitely want to keep building muscle mass. So sort of a combination of the two. So what's your goal? And then when you've picked what your goal is, then you're going to want to estimate the calories you need for that goal. So here's how you start calculating the calories you need, which is a huge question for people. Now, again, there's a math formula I'll take you through in just a minute, just so you know why this exists. But from experience, a great place to start is, and ChatGPT is a free app, you guys, free AI app. And so this would be so easy because there's paid applications of which you can do this for, but ChatGPT is free. So I recommend if you're on a budget and you want to just kind of get started. So ChatGPT, what a current day, what truly, and be honest with yourself, what an average day of what you eat is. And as detailed as you can be, you're going to get a better answer from using AI, right? So give an example of you wake up in the morning and I would even put in times. Again, as detailed as you can be, I wake up at 6 a.m. and say what you eat for breakfast. And what you might do before typing in this into ChatGPT is to write it down for yourself in a day. You might have to do some serving. If you never typically measure your food, measure it just for a day, just so that you can, again, give the best accurate representation to ChatGPT of where you are at. So maybe you normally wake up and you do about 2 cups of cereal with about 2 cups of whole milk with about a half a cup of blueberries and 3 pieces of turkey bacon, right? I'm totally making this up. I'm not saying this is what you should or shouldn't do, but give serving sizes, what time of day you do that. And then at noon, I eat a chicken salad from Chick-fil-A. Say which one it is, even it's the Mediterranean chicken salad. I don't know if that's what they have. I'm again throwing this out of thin air, but as detailed as you can when you're eating it, what it comes what salad dressing are you using? And again, say use the Chick-fil-A example. I used 1 packet of their Italian dressing and say that, right? Because what you're going to do is ChatGPT is going to pull that information, or at least what the nutrition contents of that typically is. So after you've typed in a day of what you truly on average eat, what's a normal day for you, it's going to spit out how many, and ask it then, say, here's what I eat in a day. How many calories do I average from this type of menu in a day am I eating? And it will tell you. So see where you currently are, because we're going to call that your maintenance mode. That's where you are currently in your eating lifestyle. So whether that's 2,000 calories, whatever that is, let's just use the average because that's a very average starting point as far as the book answers go. Say a 2,000 calorie a day intake. So say you're at 2,000. What is a very doable weight loss or like fat burning, but can also muscle build at the same time result with this is I'll tell people this is where you're starting, especially if you're not looking to have to change your nutrition too much. Like you have different varieties of clients, people who want to make a nutrition change because they don't feel good and they know they're eating like crap and they want to better that to whatever extent that is, maybe a little or a lot. So there's ranges within that. And then there's some people who don't want to change it that much. So especially if you're someone that doesn't really want to change the way you're eating too much because you really enjoy your lifestyle and you want to make this a lifestyle change that fits where you currently are, then say you're at 2,000. What tends to work really well for people is to then reduce that daily intake by just 200 to 300 calories. That could be 1 cup of coffee for some people. That could be 1 bag of chips for somebody. That could be, 1 less McDonald's outing for someone. Actually, that would be a lot more. You know what I'm saying? But that's not really a lot of calories, and it could be a small shift for somebody in the day, and it doesn't really throw them off that much. But yet, compounded can make a big difference, paired with especially if they, get a little more intentional with their physical activity. That's going to be a different pillar that we're going to dive into on another episode. But so what I found in real life translates very well to being something someone can maintain, even if they're in a fat loss goal, is starting there, because there's a lot of other calorie deficits that are going to add up. You've got that taken from the nutrition, but then again, workouts, cardio, your base metabolism is going to burn calories. So some of that is also going to add onto the base 200 to 300, but people often don't really feel at a loss for that, if that makes sense. But if you all of a sudden slash 1,000 calories or something like that from their food, they're going to feel it. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't stick to this. It's so hard. They're going to be craving everything, right? So something that's very doable for people to do and stick to and not feel like they're on a crash course diet is to reduce or create a deficit of 200 or 300 calories. And so what I found is when people's goals is fat loss, again, starting at the 200 to 300 calories, if it's muscle gain, a surplus of 200 to 300 calories. Now we're going to briefly touch on this, and then I'm going to dive a little more into sort of the fat loss paired with muscle gain goal, because that's where a lot of people are that would probably listen to this. That's where a lot of women are that listen to this episode or this podcast. But a lot of people take the whole I'm in my bulk phase way too far and in the wrong way. Bulk phase does not mean that you eat a bunch of crap and, oh, it's going to fuel your muscle gains and then you'll hit a lean out phase. That's what a lot of people will say from people who do bodybuilding but they're not going pro. Like that's not what the big pros do. Like they do it smarter than that. And especially for the women, like even using the example of women in the fitness industry, like in the bodybuilding, like in the bikini division, say, which isn't big bodybuilding he women, but women with great muscle mass and great leanness and great metabolisms, all that stuff, they're not packing on a ton of extra calories. It's more like 300 or so per individual, and depending on how hardcore their workouts are. But it's nothing. It's not as crazy as people want to make it seem like it needs to be. A lot of the people that are doing that are people that need the excuse to eat a bunch of crap, really. And when you're in a calorie surplus to gain muscle, what would really be great, especially if you're currently, say, in this maintenance mode where you want recomposition, you're happy with where you are, you're happy with your leanness level, but you do want some more muscle and also just want to feel better. So if you're going to be in a little bit of a calorie surplus, like sticking maybe to the 200, again, if you're wanting to stay as lean as you are, if you're doing your normal day-to-day eating that you're happy with and you're good with and you feel like you love how you look with, then having the calorie surplus be as clean of foods as possible is just going to keep you with leaner results and better muscle mass. So even when we're working with athletes, like when I'm working with young kids, really for them, like especially the young boys that are playing football and stuff, like they can eat what they want. Like we're not worried about them getting quote fat, but there is a difference if you want to get down to it between the performance, the body's performance and the quality of your muscle when it's coming from steak and potatoes versus hamburgers and fries. You know what I'm saying? So especially if you're wanting to build muscle and so you're going to have this calorie surplus, it's definitely best if it could be from a cleaner food, like again, some steak and potatoes or something that's a healthy choice as opposed to just, junk food. But even if it's some extra meal or some kind of thing like that, keeping it more too, again, starting out at least, you always are going to have to start somewhere and pivot, whether it's more or less, but that 200 to 300 calorie surplus is a very safe range. And that is what a lot of people at a high level do. And so these things about you got to throw all these 1,000 extra calories on and, eat the extra hamburgers and all this stuff. And that's what you need to bulk. That is not true, because what happens then, yeah, you will gain some muscle, but you will definitely gain a lot more fat. And then you'll have to burn that fat if you want to see the muscle underneath and not just be bulky. And especially for women, they don't want to look bulky, most of them, and don't want to feel bulky and feel fluffy. And so if you go about it that way, you will look bulky and fluffy as opposed to like strong and muscular, but still like lean or feminine. Again, lean doesn't mean have a 6-pack of abs, but there's a difference in how your body looks when the surplus is coming from junk food and a ton of extra calories you didn't need versus that 3 maybe to 500. But again, a lot of the people that I know that are even at a pro level, it's more like 300 calories. It's not as much as you think. There also just may be more rest thrown in there as opposed to really smashing your body with heavy workouts and more workout days. It may be less, but harder workouts with some more rest days. There's a lot of ways to do that. That's a different topic, but that's about as much time as I'll spend on that side of like, quote, the bulk goal. It's not as many calories as you think. So please don't go crazy, because then you're going to have to do all this cardio to get where you want in any semblance of time. And you're going to lose all that size, because mostly what you're having to spend your time burning is fat, and you're going to really work all the way backwards and not make any gains. So that's why, especially in the bodybuilding industry, they're like, when you run into your off season, stay not far from stage weight, so that then the progress you make, you're actually up leveling, as opposed to then gaining so much fat afterwards. Yeah, building a little muscle, but gaining a lot of fat too. And then you have to lean up, burn it all off to get back to basically where you started. So that's what I'll say about that part as far as the bulk situation and even in that maintenance zone. But let's dive into, again, so here's the math side, because again, I'm saying those things, that's what I found out from experience. So when we go by the book knowledge, so what's happening, just so you have a little history to it, hang on tight, even if you're a beginner, like buckle up. I'm not going to overwhelm you. This is not stuff I'm saying you need to write down these formulas. This isn't what I'm saying you should do. I'm just giving you the background history of where some of these numbers are coming from that I even played with to start. So briefly interjecting some technical methods here. So there's some different formulas that base multiplying numbers on activity output, which is very key when we're getting into setting your calorie goals. There's sedentary, there's light activity, there's moderate activity, and then there's very active. And these are different multipliers that are going to work into this formula called the Mifflin-St. Jeor. I don't know if that's exactly how you say that, but when I Googled it, that's how they said to say it. So there's this formula, Mifflin formula, that you calculate using your age, weight, height, and then that activity level multiplier. And it's going to spit out a general maintenance level calories you should eat based on that. And then it will give you an estimation for your fat loss calories or muscle gain or kind of maintenance mode. And so in general, for the average human, like a fat loss calorie deficit based on the formula is 250 to 500 calories. So like I said, I found people tend to do the best, especially in the very beginning, on the 200 to 300 range, as opposed to going straight to the 500. Because what I've also experienced is a lot of people starting out aren't even eating enough calories. So if they're already only eating 12 to 1500 calories, now you're slashing 500. That is they are not going to be feeling good. And so that actually is what happens to a lot of people. So that 250 to 3 to 500 calorie deficit is based on the book. For fat loss. For muscle gains, again, and these are also, this math is all based on percentages, which I'm not even going to say because I don't want to overwhelm you with it. But for muscle gain, same thing, 250 to 500 calorie surplus. And for maintenance, they say with the formula, it's like 100 to 200 calories. So like I said, that much of a slight deficit, but upping the protein, because when you up the protein, which is the next pillar we'll talk about next week, that is helping to keep the muscle. So even if you're cardioing, or even if you're increasing your exercise, or even if you have a slight calorie deficit and now you're also burning more calories as well, we can still hang on to that lean muscle mass if you hit your protein goals. So that's why I'm saying we're hitting what we're setting right now, what our calorie goal is going to be, figuring that out. And then on the next episode, we're going to talk about how to figure out what that protein number goal is and really working to hit that, because that's how you're going to be able to, especially if you're in sort of a, I want to tighten and lean up, but still keep shaping my composition or bettering my physical composition, then we're going to want to keep that protein high at a certain goal to keep your mass while you're burning the fat and have all the happy campers, all the happy mediums, right? So that's based on the math. Now, I'm going to briefly talk about macro strategy. But again, what I've found with my clients is I really don't push them focusing on the macros. That's stuff that I do on my end for each person, kind of figure out what their range might be, put them in a nice starting place. And that's stuff that I kind of monitor for them on the back end. They may have their calorie goal and their protein goal and their water goals they're working towards and checking off the boxes for how much they've said that they can dedicate to physical activity and movement. Again, another pillar we'll go into about setting up that for yourself successfully. But based on all that, I kind of figure some of that out on the back end for me. So as I'm seeing people's progress pictures and seeing how they're changing bi-weekly or so, if I'm wanting to make any tweaks to those behind the scenes macros. So like calories are up here as far as importance, and then beneath that, behind the scenes are these macros. So macronutrients are key things that we want to have in our nutrition, like protein, fats, carbs. Okay. And then there's another thing. It's not necessarily its own section, but simple carbs, which are more like fruits, vegetables, like healthy sugars, right? So that would still be in the carb section, but to have a well-balanced nutrition. Now, having the cleanest or healthiest choices or well-roundedness of your macronutrients, like I said earlier, as far as building muscle or having any kind of surplus, especially, is going to get you better quality outcomes. So people can still get their outcomes just focusing on the calories. And again, if you're brand new, especially, I'd say or if you've gotten kind of lost on your journey or feel stuck, just simplify things back down to focusing on the calories, because cortisol also affects your results. So if you're getting stressed out about trying to monitor all your macros and overcomplicating it, trust me, it'll slow results. But macros are a thing, and they do provide value, and especially when they're clean resources and healthy resources, they really will make your results get even better. But again, you're still going to get where you want to go, and you're going to gradually figure some of these things out, even if the first thing you're focusing on is calories as far as the nutrition situation goes. But so as far as the macronutrients, once you have your calorie target, you can, if you want to look at the macros at all, break it into the macronutrients. So for protein, if you have a fat loss goal, honestly, if you have a fat loss goal, muscle gain goal, or a maintenance goal, I'm telling my clients if they can get in a gram of protein per their body weight. Now, pausing there for a moment, because a lot of people struggle to get in enough protein. And so that's typically a standard, like book knowledge. However, most people aren't getting that much to start, so they're really having a hard time anyways. So especially if they're even on a fat loss goal, then I'll say, so say someone's at 130 and they want to get to 120, then we'll start the protein goal at 120. Now, obviously, we're going to work them up to getting there consistently, and then if they can get more, we're obviously trying to get more, because especially if they're weightlifting and they're breaking the muscle down, especially if they're not super overweight and, needing it to truly lose a ton of fat, we're going to need to keep the muscle too and not burn that off. So we're going to need the protein to work its way up, because they're going to be using those amino acids to rebuild their muscle back. They're not going to be wasted. They're not just going to be sitting there. They're not going to be screwing up your liver. So that's typically what I'll say, no matter the goal, whether it's fat loss, definitely for muscle gain, and even for maintenance. But again, if you're not good at getting your protein in, that's a good way to start it. It's to start there at what your goal body weight is, and work your way to that. And then especially if you are good at getting your protein in, then say I'm at 130 in show prep, I was eating more like 140. I'd have to look. I think it was 149. It's down here in my notes, because I'm going to give you that as an example later. But so I was eating more than my body weight in protein, but I was still trying to lean up, obviously more than I would want to be lean for like normal day-to-day life, but for stage. So still keeping that muscle mass So I had to eat even extra more than what my body weight was going to end up being. So that's kind of in general, though, the goal if you're looking at macros for your protein. And then for fats, and again, I'm also going to tell you too, there's apps that can do this for you. So you don't have to sit here and do a bunch of math, because for fats, you're going to aim for 20 to 30% of your total calories from the fats, because this helps with good hormone health, good support for hormone health. So I do like to keep the fats around there. And again, we're going to go into some nuances per person, and then what they say. So by book knowledge, protein is typically the 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. Fats is 20 to 30% of your nutrition should come from fat to support your hormones. And then carbs should be, the rest of your grams of carbs should be filling the rest of the calorie goal. So whatever that calorie goal is should then come from the carbs. This is where, at least for me with my clients individually, we work on, again, coming from seeing where those carbs are coming from, if they're wanting to clean up their nutrition. If they're not, again, we're focusing on the calories. Where is that 200 or 300 going to come from? What would be most efficient? What would help clean up the nutrition if we could take that out? But from the carbs, especially in my experience, because of energy output, the gram of carbs isn't quite as high as what that book knowledge would say, because that's quite a bit of carbs. For what I know, the average person is actually outputting. And so to use those carbs, because if you don't use it, you'll store it. So if you're not needing to use it to output an energy from your day-to-day work, you're lifting or you're walking or playing with your kids or whatever your internal systems need to do what they're doing, the rest will be stored. So most of the people I've worked with don't need just the whole residual amount of their calorie goal to the grams of carbs. But this is stuff that we tweak as you get going. So tips, adjusting as you go. You've got to stick to things, like I said, 2 or 3 weeks at least. See how your body responds. And so consistency is huge. Focus on hitting those water goals, hitting the calorie goal that you established earlier, protein goals after we talk about that, and then your physical activity goals and resting, and stick to it for a good 3 weeks. Some people's bodies respond faster. If you have more weight to lose, especially if we're talking about fat loss, it'll come off quicker. As you get to more average size person, it's going to take longer to come off. So you'll start to feel a physical, like energetic difference first, like on a cellular level, and then you'll start seeing smaller results physically, maybe on the scale, that kind of stuff. But one of the things, or why people need customization for fats and carbs, is because we all have different body types and base metabolism. So there's this thing called, if you have a body that's an ectomorph, which tends to be naturally lean and often has easy time building muscle. And so they often do better with higher carbs, again, in general. And then endomorphs tend to store fat a little more easily, and they might feel and perform better on lower carbs, but have a little higher fat content. So just different types of body can need different types of things. And then there's different levels of insulin sensitivity. Some people with better insulin sensitivity can handle carbs well, and then some are the opposite. And so they need to have a lower carb approach. It's just the reality. And none of this sometimes will unless you've gone in to have hormones tested and things, which I'm always recommending that to people, whether they feel like their hormones are off or not. It just gives us a good baseline. But it just comes from trying things. And then third is your activity type. Some people enjoy and like to do hardcore type workouts like CrossFit, HIIT, Orange Theory, right? Those kind of like big type of workouts. Those kind of people might need more carbs. Whereas if you're doing more like moderate strength training, steady state cardio, that kind of stuff, then you can do with a little lower carbs, still keeping your fat good, and high protein. So again, it kind of depends on what are people's energy outputs like, what types of choices are they making there. And again, too, it depends on what kind of carbs or fats people are choosing. If they're picking less clean carbs, we might want to make it a little lower, if that makes sense, because it's going to have a lot more fat even paired with those carb choices. So there's nuances along the way, but if you're wanting to calculate your macros, that's a good way to do it. And again, there's apps for this. I'll tell, mine of choice at the end. There's plenty. Most of them are some kind of paid choice. So again, you can certainly use ChatGPT and say, all right, so we've calculated my calorie goal based on the MIF formula and my age and all that good stuff, my energy output, what kind of, activity level am I, or am I choosing to be? Let's say you've been sedentary, but now you're looking to be mildly active, right? So setting all those parameters, you've got your calorie goal for whatever your goal is, fat loss, muscle gain, etc. Now you could ask it to maybe give you an example starting point for some macros, and then just try it. And if you feel like you're not leaning up after a few weeks, then reduce the carbs. Now, here's the key as far as like adjustments. Make small adjustments, not huge, big changes. So say you follow the base book example, and so the carbs are pretty high. So decrease it by 25 to 50 grams. Make a small change and then stick to that for a couple weeks. See if you start to change physically, if you feel better, and if you don't, then maybe reduce it a little bit more. Now, you definitely want to ever be ridiculously low carb. So again, maybe sticking to something for 6 or 8 weeks, then maybe flip-flop it. See if your body does a little better with lower fats and higher carbs, right? So you're going to just have to play with some things, but you really are going to start to learn your body as you go through this. And again, I'm talking about this as if you're doing this on your own. Obviously, if you can have a trainer or a coach, that's super helpful, because then it takes some of that off of you that you're figuring out, and they should be figuring that out and helping you with that. But if you're going to make adjustments, make small adjustments so you can acclimate and see, and especially if you're taking it from your nutrition, then like from your food sources or your calories of food going in, instead of upping activity level to burn the extra calories, then again, go in small increments because we want you to have as much as you can, right? So just find where that tipping point is. And if you're doing fats, increasing fats, I'd say by 5 or 10 grams, not as aggressively as even with the carbs. And then keep protein steady or up the protein a little bit as well, especially if you're on that lower carb plan. So pay attention to your hungers and cravings. If it seems like excessive, make sure, are you hitting the calorie goal? Because if you're not actually hitting your calorie goal, oftentimes that's what's responsible for people's cravings. Are you hitting your carb goal and your fat goals? Because if you're not, your body still is needing your nutrition, proper nutrition. So you'll have more cravings. And then if you have been hitting those numbers, but you're still feeling excessively hungry or craving, then sometimes what happens is, as you get moving your body with workouts and cleaning up your nutrition, then your metabolism is going to increase. So oftentimes with my clients, I always tell them, let me know if you're ever like, you should never feel starving or hungry or like you're dying. That should not be the case. So I always want to know if that happens. Usually in the beginning, they weren't eating enough, and so they're working on getting more food in. They feel super full. And then maybe 3 to 4 weeks in, all of a sudden they start getting hungry. Well, it's because their base metabolism has now woken up and sped up. And then I want to adjust their calorie goal and some of their carbs and fats to make sure that they are having their nutrient stores filled and they have, no brain fog and all that stuff. So sometimes numbers need to shift as you just wake your metabolism up, and it does speed up. And as you build more muscle, your metabolism at base is going to speed up because it takes more metabolism to support more muscle. So pay attention to your energy levels. If you're feeling sluggish, those kind of things, then you may need to adjust your numbers. So performance during workouts. Do you feel like you're getting good performance? So those kind of things can give you indications of if you may need to tweak some of that number. And again, if you stick to things for 2 or a couple weeks, 3 weeks, you should start to have energy. So again, if you're not, then something needs to shift because you should start to feel better, not worse. So anyway, so for technical weight loss, it does come down to math. So again, if any of you listening are on a lean up goal, even if that's paired with some muscle building, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to also explain the math to you. And there's a point for this. Okay. And we'll get to it in a second, but we're looking for a balance between technically how you lose pounds, but also sustainability and a lifestyle shift. I am always about the lifestyle shift. Even if that means results might come a little slower, I want you to be able to not only get the results, but then keep it. So that's what I'm always a proponent of. So when it comes down to the basics of wanting to lose weight/fat, not just weight, but fat and gain lean muscle. In case you didn't know, we're going to go back to the basics. 1 pound of fat is 3,500 calories. So you need a 3,500 calorie deficit to lose a pound. So total, not in a day, but total, once you get to a total of 3,500 calories deficit minus from your normal day to day, then you'll have lost a pound. So For sustainable fat loss, again, by the book, it's about half a pound to 1 pound per week, which would be 250 to that 500 calorie deficit per day stacked upon each other. So if somebody has a 10-pound weight, that's just again by the book. So for a 10-pound fat loss goal, which tends to be a very common number people want to throw out there, then a realistic target for a 10-pound loss would be more like 10 to 20 weeks. Now, this is important, and this is why I'm explaining the math, because most people need a reality check here. I have so many people that start out, they're like, I want to lose 10 pounds in a month, or even 10 pounds in 2 months. But they also don't want a drastic, they want to enjoy life. They don't want to feel crazy restricted. They don't want to do the crash course diet. They don't want to do those things, right? But they want to lose 10 pounds in a month. And I'm like, that's not saying the same thing. And that's what people don't realize is you're going to have a reality check on what an aggressive diet means, what it doesn't mean, and what truly making a realistic goal looks like, and then be okay with that. So you've got to find the balance and understanding that what you really want, and also the effort you're willing to put in. So we're going to talk about the calories in a second, but it's one thing to say, okay, the 10-pound thing is an aggressive diet, and I personally won't sponsor that, because it doesn't work. You could lose the 10 pounds when you're busting your butt, but you're going to be miserable. You're not going to be happy. And as soon as you've reached that goal, you are going to binge eat your way right back to it, if not more. So, and potentially damage your metabolism along the way, hate life, and not believe in health and fitness. So it's not worth it. All right. But what we've got to realize is that you also have to get realistic with your expectation on how fast you can lose weight. That's a sustainable thing. But then your effort you're willing to put into it. Because I've had people that are like, yes, I'm so committed. I get that, what you just said about the 10 pounds, Gina. I understand. Cool. But I also don't want to have to change anything about what I eat, at all. Or I don't really want to have to work, add any more time to workouts or walk, or they don't want to change anything. They just want to lose more weight or fat. And it's like, well, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So if you're wanting to get to this goal and you're clearly not living in your goal yet, something's going to have to change. If you eat fruit 10 times a day, you're going to have to be willing, maybe can you let go of one? Will you even start there? And some people are like, well, I don't really want to. I'm like, well, then you don't really want to lose 10 pounds at some point. Because that's just a small change, right? Or they don't want to give up any small part. They don't want to eat 2 less French fries, whatever that means, 1 less bag of chips, whatever their thing is. And it depends, again, it doesn't have to be their favorite thing. Again, especially if we're working from the most basic start of your goal. Like we've seen in ChatGPT what your normal day-to-day life is that you've been doing and what that food is, and you want to keep most of those foods. We'll find even 200 calories to decrease if you want to start getting the change. Or again, we'll talk about this when we get into the movement pillar or the exercise pillar. If you don't want to change anything about your food, then you are going to have to increase your energy output or else you will stay the same. So in what way can you find it in yourself to burn an extra 200 calories in a day, right? But again, if you want results sooner than later, even in a healthy way, then why don't you take 200 from something you're eating, change one little thing, clean up one little area, and then also burn an extra 200 calories and get there faster, right? So there's a whole combination of things that are working together, but it comes down to also getting realistic with yourself about what your effort is you're willing to put in, because especially if you're working with a trainer, that trainer cannot eat the food for you. They cannot lift the weights for you. They cannot walk outside for you. You're going to have to decide how much you're willing to put into your transformation and be okay with what you get out of that. So little bit of a reality check there, because so many people do need it, both on setting the realistic expectation for how quickly fat can be lost, how quickly muscle can be gained. That takes time. And again, the effort they're willing to put into it. So I just had to throw that out there. You might need to do a little expectation audit or a determination/commitment audit to get the results that you want. So now let's get into some examples, because again, We've talked about calorie goals, ChatGPT helping you sort that through, like where you've been, making a little bit of an improvement, trying to stick to that. If you want to go into the macros, you can. And now let's see what that kind of looks like. So, especially paired with energy output, because I'm wanting to kind of spend a little time on this expectations of results, because a lot of people give up when they feel like they're following their plan, which they are, but they thought they would be further along. Okay, because we're still what's the word, cleansing out what old society has taught about like getting these fast results. Definitely, it's much more common knowledge that you're not looking for the crash course diet anymore, but it definitely used to be a thing. And we're still purging that out of society, even if you think you don't believe that. Like I said, a lot of people still throw out the 10 pounds in a month thing and just don't realize that equals a very aggressive diet and nutrition plan and is something that's not healthy, but they want to be healthy. So this is going to help bring to life what can it look like for it to be healthy. So we'll use some of my stats, right? So I'm 35 years old, 130 pounds, 5'5.5". With the Mifflin formula and my energy output, I'm highly active. Okay, so I'm going to give you two scenarios. Scenario one is I'm more active than this, but I'm setting it up for like if someone my height and weight, and with the formula is doing more like a moderate activity level. So lifting 3 days a week, doing cardio 3 times a week of like 30 minutes. The base starting maintenance amount of calories for that person, like I mentioned earlier, would be like an average of 2,000 calories. Very average. I'm average height, weight, that kind of thing. So a sustainable fat loss target for this situation, this example, a mild deficit would look like about 250 calories. So that'd be about 1,750 calories a day. So 1,750. A moderate deficit would be at 400 or 500 calories, which would be at about 1,500 to 1,600 calories. So then if you stuck to the mild deficit, the expected rate of loss would be about a half pound per week, and then about a pound per week if you did the moderate deficit. By the book. Again, we're going to get into technicalities here, but by the book. Scenario number 2, which is where I am in off season where I'm not competing. Lifting 5 days a week, doing cardio 5 days a week, 30 minutes, and having 2 good rest days. So very active. So the numbers the formula would spit out is that my maintenance would be about 2,230 calories a day. Sustainable fat loss target at a mild deficit would be eating, so it'd be the 250 calorie deficit, and that'd be 1,950 calories I'd adjust to. For the moderate deficit, it'd be about 1,700 to 1,800 calories. So the expected rate of loss for the mild would be still about that half pound per week, and then for the moderate would be about a pound per week, going 1,700 to 1,800. So again, let's equate this to a real life difference, especially if you don't really have a lot of fat to lose. Results are going to come a little slower. So I'm highly active. This is like all based on my stats. And here's what like my real life for my fitness competitions looked like. So show prep macros were this. And this was considered an aggressive one because I had 3 months to get ready for the show, 12 weeks. So my show prep macros were about 1,600 calories. And again, I thought I was eating a lot more than that. I wasn't really calculating. I was in a place where I was happily monitoring how many calories I was eating per day before I started the show prep. But it must not have been as much as I thought it was. And I eat a lot because I felt like I was eating a ton of food on my show plan. Like I'd never in any show prep eaten this much food, and it was 1,600 calories, but it was 43 fats, which is also probably higher than I'd ever really tried before for myself, 142 grams of carbs, and then 159 protein. And I started out weighing 130, and by showtime, I was at 120. So I was lifting 5 days a week, cardio 7 days a week for 30 minutes. Towards the end, it bumped up to like 45. The most I ever got to was 55 minutes, but it wasn't for very many weeks. So towards the end, it bumped up a little bit. But for most of the 12 weeks, it was 30 to 35 minutes, but 7 days a week. And I lost total, so about 3 pounds a month. So that was for eating perfectly clean. So starting at 130 pounds, being 5'5", lifting, never missing a lifting session for 5 days a week, cardio 7 days a week, never missing a cardio session. So really doing the prep perfectly. And I was only able to burn, and I have a good, healthy metabolism. I was only able to burn 3 pounds a month for 12 months or for 12 weeks straight. Now, again, was super fit, at the national level, looked great. So from where I was starting to getting there, that's how I looked. But just that gives you an example. That was an aggressive plan, technically, by the book, even though to me, again, like I'm thinking, man, 1600 felt like a ton of calories. I don't think I could even, in this muscle gain by the book, I don't think I could even hardly shove in 2200 calories. So again, I'm sharing my show prep breakdown of macros, so that you can get a realistic experience of, okay, there's the book stuff, which is a great outline, a great way to start, but then you will have to tweak based on what you can even physically ingest, which again, I did have to work up to making sure I did get those full amount of calories, because that was the goal. That's what my coach set for me. And so I was working on to get to that. He's like one of the top coaches in the industry, an Olympic coach. So knows what he's doing, has his own supplement line, all the things. So trust him. So that was where I was needed to work up to. So I had to really kind of shove in that food to start. And then I got really used to it, and I wanted the food like clockwork, and I no longer felt overly full. Good. My metabolism sped up to that. I got used to all the things. Got used to eating that much protein. That was way more than my body weight by the end of the day. I was, again, on stage, I was probably about 120, something like that. But eating 159 grams of protein. So give you that example to say tweaks will happen, but then two, again, on even an aggressive version of that was, I'm losing 3 pounds a week, and I'm very fit, very active, followed that plan perfectly, never ate crap, like no desserts, none of the things. And it was 3 pounds. So I don't want this to be discouraging. If you're like, well, I want to lose 10 pounds, you will lose 10 pounds. You can do this. But getting your expectation in the right place is going to actually springboard you to success. If you're thinking you should be able to lose 10 pounds in a month, and you're struggling to get there, you're going to beat yourself up, because especially if you're doing whatever your coach said, or you're doing whatever goals you set out for yourself, and you're checking the boxes right, people convince themselves they're just not doing it right, or it's just not possible, and they give up. And that's not true. It's just your expectation of how fast you thought it should happen. So I just want to clear that up for people that, again, if you have a lot more weight to lose, weight will in the beginning definitely fall off pretty quickly, or it can, just depending on how much excess you have to lose. But as you get more to what would be like an average weight, like amount of fat for your height and weight, and if you want to be a little leaner, your body's going to take a little more time letting it go, because it's like, I feel like we need this fat. I feel like we need this. Let's hold on to it a little longer. It's just going to take longer to burn it off. Doesn't mean you have to, again, go hardcore and smash yourself 24/7. That's not how it works either. Again, taking the rest. So again, this is how I'm different. So that was my show situation, which was considered an aggressive diet based on the book, or plan. Even though I was eating really healthy foods, felt super full, felt fully satisfied, I did not feel like I was lacking anyway. The hard part for me with the show prep regime was more so that I couldn't have any freebies. So I always had to be the perfectly clean foods. Always the 7 days of cardio, the lifts were fine. The 7 days of cardio for 3 months straight, that started to get a little mental by the end. Even if it was just 30 minutes, it was like 7 days. I could feel it wearing on my body by the end of that. So for a sustainable plan, so for me, that is not sustainable. Even though I'm a very driven competitive athlete, that is not where I would choose to live my life there. So for me, like right now, just wanting to be ship-shaped for summer, so still be nice and lean, have a six-pack abs, and build some more muscle, then to me, I am more, like we mentioned earlier, living more in the probably 1,700 to 1,800 calorie range at this point. And then still keeping the protein to about that amount, and my lifting is 5 days a week, cardio is 5 days a week for 30 minutes, and have 2 really good rest days. And then I have a good free day each week. So that's kind of like a calorie surplus day that I throw in there that really helps for just your mental state. Like you can have the birthday party, you can do Valentine's Day, you can enjoy the bridal shower, or if you're just having one of those days, then you can enjoy some cookies or whatever with your kids. You know what I mean? So I like having that as a long-term maintenance mode if I'm in a leaning up phase, because it keeps your sanity, it lets you look forward to something, and so I like that. So for me, the calories are more like we had talked about earlier, in that mild to moderate calorie goal range. And again, I'm not worried. I mean, I'm still sticking to sort of because I'm familiar with my macros and where my body works well with things, I'm still sticking with those macros. But say the calorie goal is in that range. And again, with my physical activity output. So just giving you some real life examples of what this can look like. So for me, sticking to that regimen for summertime is helping me lean up, but still keep muscle mass, build a little bit of muscle as well, and be fully happy and satiated with my food and keep sanity and be a happy camper. So hopefully that can give you some ideas of how that could look for you. And again, the weight, which I don't really weigh, like I'm in a state where I'm happy. I'm just kind of perfecting, quote, if you will. So I don't really monitor my weight. But if you were like, so for you guys, if that's your goal and you're monitoring, whether for muscle increase or fat loss, the point of all this is just saying, okay, let's get down to our summary of this episode. We're going to decide what your goal is, whether it's fat loss, muscle building, or maintenance. We're going to work on number 2, setting what that calorie goal is. So use ChatGPT and get started. Or you can go with what I'm saying, which is very simple, and just minus 200 or 300 calories from where you are currently at, and stick to that 2 or 4 weeks and tweak accordingly. The key is then to implement. You got to put it into action and see what happens, and then monitor with small adjustments if you need adjustments. And then if you want something to help you structure, then using an app, like I personally like First Form, the First Form app, because you can plug in all the things from water to the calorie goals. They'll help you calculate the calorie goals and the macros. You can take it basically as in depth as you want, and all with just a standard, which is like $9.99 a month. And then there's a premium version that's not much more expensive. And you can even have a direct coach, like a certified nutritionist and a really in-depth coach. Also for the standard, you get a full library of workouts. So if you also wanted a guide for the exercise stuff, then you get a full library of that. So I know there's other apps out there too. I just am not familiar with those personally, but like the First Form app, and I have a special link for you guys if you want it. It's www.first, like the number 1, and this will be in the show notes too. First, number 1, form, PHORM.app/Gina Oldham. Gina Oldham is spelled JeanaOldham. So firstform.app/Gina Oldham. It'll be in the show notes. But even for that standard version, that's a great place to start, because you can monitor all the things we've talked about in all of these pillars in the mini series, plus have a full library of workouts, which is great. So if you don't have a one-on-one trainer, you can use this app and help track things. Or of course you can do it on your own. I've talked about exactly how to do that, obviously here today. So hopefully this gave you so much information. There's one additional question that someone posed from Instagram that I was going to address. A lot of the other questions I got from Instagram were already kind of talked about above, but that last question was, once someone's comfortable in their deficit, should they stay there or ever cycle up? So the short answer is no, you don't ever want to just stay in one place, especially if it was in the deficit place endlessly. So you do want to have periods of cycle, and there's my favorite way to do this is with refeeds, because again, it's like higher calorie days that you've set for yourself. I like this because instead of like taking quote diet breaks, I feel like taking diet breaks, which is also an option where you can like basically have somebody up their calories for the next 2 or 4 weeks. People are so busy that I feel like they have a hard time. Then when they get to maybe their upper part of their weight limit where they're happy and they start to feel like they want to lean up again, it's hard for them to go back and forth between the two. I find people do better to find their new lifestyle habits and their new routine and their new rotations of food that they enjoy and that kind of stuff, but then plug in refeeds. So say, like for me, when I get to a place where I'm happy with my leanness level and muscle level, I already always do like one refeed or like higher calorie day where I can just have what I want. But sometimes I'll plug in a second one, not a whole day, but like a meal. So maybe on a Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll have an extra just free meal, and that gives me a boost. And it both gives me a boost in calories, but then also just, mental and all that stuff. So that's something I'm a fan of, is keeping you on a cycle so you're not just staying in a deficit the whole time, is to cycle in that way. So that's kind of how I would answer that question. No, you don't want to stay in a true deficit the whole time. A lot of people, once they get to where they're happy with, we start letting you sub in like other things that make you happier. Again, people kind of naturally start to do that, even if they're plugging in more freebies per day, like just one thing. Then when they start to get to where they're like, oh, I want to get back a little tighter, then we hone it back in and we take out some of those. So that's a couple different ways that could look, is like you start having a little more looseness with your nutrition in the day. If you had it really clean, then you get a little more loose with it. But then when you get to the upper limit of where you're like, oh, I want to get tighter, hone it back in again, or stay very systematic, which tends to be very helpful for people, and then just have those planned like free days or free meals that you even look forward to, and you plan them out and you're excited about them, and those really boost the calories up. And then the next day going back to normal also helps you burn a little extra calories, because your metabolism's way up here thinking it just had all these calories to burn, and then you go back to your normal. So sometimes you can burn a little extra calories the next day. So I know that was a lot of info. You'll probably want to re-listen so that you can take some more notes and jot things down. Shoot me any messages you have as follow-up from this episode, because that could certainly be in addition to the mini-series, is just people's questions that they had per episode, per pillar. Happy to do that as well. So, but yeah, hopefully this could give you a really great outline of just, all right, if you've gotten off track or you never were on track to start, let's just focus on a calorie goal. Find where you're at now, figure out just a slight deficit, 200 to 300 calories as far as nutrition, and then try that on, see how that goes. We'll be adding in other pillars along with it and tweak just a little bit here and there accordingly as you go. Feel free to use like a First Form app or any other app to help you monitor these things as well. It's really you'll be surprised how much even just focusing on the calories can create a really great transformation. So hope it was helpful. I'll catch you on the next one. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.